last week, the Land Transport Authority delayed its decision as to which companies can operate shared personal mobility devices, PMDs, in Singapore. LTA said it needed more time to review imposing additional requirements on licensees to ensure the safety of users and the general public. So I have here with me Zhaki Abdullah. Hello again.
Hi.
You report on transport at the Straits Times. So hi Zhaki. So now PMD started selling in Singapore way back in 2014, right? But the Active Mobility Bill only came into effect May last year.
Yes.
Right. So it seems, and now with LTA saying that they need more time to review PMD regulations, it seems to me that they're playing catch up. So, but what do you think is the biggest issue concerning PMDs?
I think there are three issues regarding the regulations, the infrastructure, as well as the education aspect of it. So in terms of the regulations, I think there's some confusion on the part of lay people. What's an e-bike? What's an e-scooter? Where can these devices go? So if you're coming into this cold, right, or if you're buying an e-scooter for the first time, you might not know these differences. And as well as, I think infrastructure is an issue since PMDs are required to ride on the pavements rather than the roads. Some of these places are a bit too narrow to accommodate some of these devices as well.
Maybe we could go back to the confusing regulations. So you said that lay people, well, like myself, I don't really know the difference between an e-bike, an e-scooter, so on and so forth. But what I do know is that there are different speed limits, and that is taken into account, right, when one signs up for a license, or maybe you could elaborate a bit more on the differences between the e-bikes and e-scooters.
So e-bikes are required to ride on the roads or on cycling paths, whereas for e-scooters it's the opposite. They cannot ride on the roads and they can only go on footpaths or cycling paths. So that's one of the, I think, the key differences between the two types of devices.
Okay, right.
And e-bikes are also required to, they are not allowed to have a throttle, and you sort of have to pedal first before you can sort of get up to speed and when the motor kicks in. So those kinds of differences between the devices,
Okay, then in addition you will say also the pavements and the footpaths, that tends to be a source of confusion for users of the pavements as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, so there are, I would say there are different classifications for
what is a pavement and what is a footpath. So maybe you could explain to us, what is a pavement? How do I know that I'll be walking on a pavement, and when do I know that I'll be walking on a footpath?
So the pavement, I guess, is a generic term that I think you and I would understand. But in terms of the regulations, shared paths is the term that I guess the LTA uses. So this covers places where like cycling paths, where you see in places like Tampines or Ang Mo Kio, where there's a little sort of red lane on the pavement.
Oh, and then there'll be a logo, right? That's a bicycle logo or something like that.
Yeah, so those are considered cycling paths, and there are also the park connectors, which are also considered shared paths. So bicycles and PMDs are they're supposed to go here, but there's nothing that prevents pedestrians from actually walking on that particular side of the pavement. So and for footpaths, so these are just your normal pavements where you and I might walk on from the bus stop or from the MRT station. Anywhere that's not specifically marked is considered a footpath. There are also different speeds between these different areas. So for cycling paths, bicycles and PMDs can go at 25 kilometers per hour. But on footpaths, they are allowed on footpaths, but they can only ride at 10 kilometers per hour.
So that's the confusing part. They're allowed on both, but then they have to go at different speeds.
Yeah.
And who would remember, to that, okay, footpath is what, 10 km? You see, I already almost forgot.
Exactly.
For shared paths, it's 25 km per hour.
So I think this leads to some confusion on the part of both riders as well as pedestrians. Where can they go, where can they not go?
And then the third one, I think you were saying also for issues, is the training of PMDs. Like people should at least know what they're using, right?
Yeah. So for in terms of training wise, so there's no mandatory safety training required on the part of anybody who actually buys an e-scooter or any type of device. So there is a voluntary one, the Safe Riding program by the LTA, But this is again a voluntary program which teaches you how to ride safely, where you can go, and things like that.
Okay, so now you brought up problems. Maybe do you have any solutions to these problems?
Yeah, I think the regulations probably they can be relooked, probably streamlined in certain places, like refining some of the differences between what is considered an e-bike, what is considered an e-scooter, where they can go. These sort of things I think maybe could be simplified further, such that anybody who sees them or buys one, it's a much easier task for them to actually know what they can do, where they can go, and things like that. So that's I think one area that probably can be refined further.
Okay.
The other thing is for infrastructure. So I think probably dedicated bike lanes are the way to go. You see them in other cities as well. In New York, I think has about 2,000 kilometers of bike lanes currently, and so that's one way to sort of avoid this sort of collisions between e-scooters and pedestrians. So by having these dedicated paths, if e-scooters are to remain on footpaths, are to remain on pavements rather, I think probably they should be widened, more clearly demarcated. Where is a cycling path? Where is a footpath?
Instead of weaving in and
Yes.
out. How about how about of the solutions you mentioned, which one do you think is the easiest to implement?
I think probably the easiest at this point would be to make training mandatory, because at this point e-scooters already need to be registered. The deadline is the end of this month to get your e-scooter registered.
Take note.
And so it's just a small step from there to get people to say, hey, there's this program, why don't you go for this, so that you sort of know the rules, you know how to ride safely and where you can go. So I think that would probably be the easiest one to implement, and it would probably help avoid some of the issues that we see cropping up currently.
Because the biggest issue is actually an LTA said it's a safety
Yes.
issue, it's a safety concern, right?
Yeah.
Because there were many accidents that happened last year in the past few years.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, thank you so much, Zhaki, for sharing your solutions to PMDs. Hopefully, will be taken into account.
Thanks.
Because we can't escape PMDs. Right? And those are our top stories for the day. For more news and videos, do log on to straitstimes.com. Once again, I'm Melissa. Join us for more big stories tomorrow. Same time, same place.